Hey guys, what's up? It is Ripe again, back with more HOA stories. In today's title story, a family loses their dream home because of a greedy, tyrannical HOA. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right into the Homeowner Association stories. This one is titled, HOA refused to host wheelchair-accessible meetings and sued me for $20,000. I fought back and won. My life almost ended 5 years ago when I was in a terrible motorcycle accident. My back and pelvis were broken, among plenty of other injuries, and it took me almost 2 years to recover from it. I have remained mostly wheelchair bound, but I continue to work in physical therapy to walk again. My wife Anna and I decided to move to a home that had a larger open floor plan and was located somewhere beautiful and close to physical therapy, which prior to moving was almost an hour away. I know, why would I go there if it is so far away? Well, they have therapists that specialize in rehabbing individuals who were partially paralyzed and have immense success. This was my best chance at walking again, and I wanted to make it faster and easier for Anna to get me there. We found an incredible home that overlooks a truly beautiful lake with a spacious park next door. Boy, is it a sight to see with all of its mature and lovely trees and hills in the background. I would say it's nothing less than breathtaking in the fall when the leaves change. The property is honestly such a lucky find, it had barely been on the market when we snagged it. When we purchased the home, we knew that there was an HOA and we agreed to it. I liked the idea of having the surrounding homes look nice and kept well because we came from an area that had a lot of less attractive properties and old cars parked everywhere. We just wanted something new and different too. I was somewhat excited to go to HOA meetings as I was feeling kind of curious and wanted to see what it was all about. I discovered that there were 4 members on this HOA board and they held it not far from my home at the public neighborhood park that was next to my house. When I say next to my house, it was still kind of far away, especially for a guy in a wheelchair. It was simply not possible for me to wheel myself or have my wife push me across the bumpy and awkward terrain. The first meeting was a pain and felt kind of demeaning. The 4 board members liked to sit at a park bench under a large maple tree. A few others came to attend besides the members and myself, and they brought their own chairs or squeezed onto the bench. This particular bench was located about 30 feet from any parking spots, and when I told Anna to drive onto the grass to be closer to the bench, an angry lady very quickly told me I could not park there. When I told her that I could not get myself and my wheelchair over there, she said that I could listen from my vehicle in the nearest parking space. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have some crazy superpower where I can hear conversations from 30 feet away. We tried our best to hear, but it was just not going to happen. Anna went to ask one of the people if they minded giving us their phone number so we could call and listen in to the conversation, and one gentleman nicely gave us his number. We were able to listen in to the rest of the conversation, but it just felt like a few of them were being short and kept asking if we could hear every few minutes in a condescending tone. Once I realized the meeting was coming to a close, I piped up that I would be happy to hold the next HOA meeting at our house. We have plenty of room and it was right there anyway, and I would supply drinks and snacks as well. The same woman quickly shot the idea down and said that they had it in the same place for years and she was not going to change it now. I went to the next meeting and called the same number again. I asked about switching locations, maybe to somewhere more accessible for wheelchairs. However, instead one of the male board members said that we could try and carry me over to the bench. To me, that is such an embarrassing suggestion. I immediately declined it and decided to listen in like last time. I was growing impatient with this treatment, and the next month meeting is truly what pushed me over the edge of anger and frustration. This time the meeting had been rained out and they had to move it to the rude woman's house. I learned that her name was Lori and that she was actually the chairman of the board. She had a huge set of stairs that led to her house and there was no feasible way for me to get inside. I once again had to listen by phone and this time I was fed up and left before the meeting was over. Humiliated and angry, I called a lawyer and started the process of suing the crap out of these jerks. It took me a few days to gather some quotes and prepare everything for the attorney that I chose. We worked up a case against them saying that they were violating the state's Fair Housing Act, which stated that meetings must be open to all HOA members. I was unsure if that meant that it had to be accessible to everyone though. You know how wording can mean everything with the law. In those few days I received a visitor at my door. His name was Alan and I recognized him from the meetings. It turns out that Alan was upset with my treatment at these HOA meetings and spoke up to Lori about it. She swiftly had him removed from the board and replaced by a friend of hers. He said that he never understood why Lori and some of the others wanted to exclude me so badly and apologized for being involved in my mistreatment. We managed to get an emergency injunction held and the next meeting was at a clubhouse we rented out and was wheelchair accessible. Lori was clearly pretty PO'd the whole time and did not have much to say but kept the sour expression on her face. Our case was not over yet though. We still were waiting for the court date, which finally arrived after several more months. It turns out that the HOA board decided that they were going to countersue me and wanted $20,000 for any legal fees they have incurred. It was awkward in the courtroom as we waited for the judge to arrive. There were an older gentleman who, if I had to guess, had plenty of experience in his craft. Both sides explained their cases and afterwards he asked his own questions. He asked Lori why she was not willing to make these meetings accessible to someone in a wheelchair. She said some crap about there being limited options and that this was the routine for years. She claimed she offered solutions but that I was completely unreasonable. What? Because I didn't want you guys carrying me across the park? The judge's consideration was short. He started off by saying that this was the first time he had had an issue with an HOA and someone with a disability like mine. He actually joked that he avoided cases with HOAs but decided to pick this one up because of me. He said that under the Americans with Disabilities Act of our state that they are legally obligated to hold their meetings at a location accessible to everyone. He ordered that the HOA pay me what I asked for plus more. They wanted $20,000 from us, which he dismissed, turning around and awarding me the money instead. The feeling was wonderful and so satisfying. I could not believe it. Lori was stuttering at one point and even tried to argue with the judge, who was not shy about telling her that she was the most wrong in the situation here today. Apparently our hero at his desk had a son who was paralyzed in a car accident when a drunk driver hit him. He said that this was the least he could do for people that were being mistreated by others because of a disability. Lori was fuming. She stormed out of the room and withdrew herself from the HOA board after that day. She did stay in the neighborhood and could be seen tending to her yard sometimes, but for the most part kept to herself. Alan and I became best friends and I now enjoy attending the HOA meetings at a wheelchair-accessible location that no one has a single complaint about, which is my house. We lost our dream home because of a greedy, tyrannical HOA. They ruined our credit and destroyed my life. About 7 years ago, my life seemed like it was going great. I had finally landed the job I had always wanted, which was high paying and had great benefits, and we were able to move into our dream home. That is, until a horrible, greedy HOA decided to make everything a living hell. My wife and I had been married for less than a year when we moved into the home and had big plans for a family and future there. We knew when we purchased it that we would have an HOA, and we read through all of the legal mumbo-jumbo like you're supposed to. I was not afraid of living in an HOA-governed neighborhood because my parents had been in one for almost 20 years and had no issues. The home and neighborhood were just perfect. The people next door were always great and became close friends of ours eventually. We honestly had no issues for the first 2 years that we lived there, that is until we had a family emergency that kept us occupied for almost a month. My beautiful wife Melanie and her family are from Puerto Rico. There was a huge and devastating tropical storm that damaged thousands of homes and businesses on the island, including my wife's grandparents' and parents' residence. Her grandfather also became ill and was in the hospital for quite some time after the storm. Long story short, we rushed back to pack and fly out there to see and help her family get back on their feet. We did the best we could with the short amount of time that was available and sent the HOA a letter and an email stating what was going on and that the yard and other upkeep might not be done. We did not hear back from them before we ended up leaving for PR. With everything that was going on, we honestly never even worried about the house or the HOA. At this point, I still had good faith that nothing bad would happen because we took the steps to notify them of our emergency, and well, we were wrong. After almost a month of being gone in PR, we received a phone call from our neighbor stating that there were dozens of letters on the front door and that there was something that looked suspiciously like a legal document. This info got me spooked, causing me to pack my bags and head back to our home. My wife decided to stay in Puerto Rico until her father was out of the hospital. By the time that I arrived at home, I saw exactly what my neighbor had informed me of. There were dozens of letters on the front step tucked under the mat and taped to the door. The worst document of all was one that was clearly the legal paper he had mentioned. Upon reading it quickly, it is quite apparent that this is some kind of a lien that they've put on our house. I had no idea what this type of thing entails, but I know that it is not good. I called dozens of lawyers and spent hours trying to find someone who was willing to help. I finally found a guy, but he was not giving me the best feeling in the world. He essentially told me that these types of things are undisputable and that fighting HOAs in court is a suicide mission for homeowners and their attorneys. Awesome. Not only was I in trouble with the HOA and the mortgage company now, but I was also in the hot seat with my job. Being gone so long had put me in a position where I was replaceable, which is exactly what ended up happening a few weeks later. I called my wife and let her know what was going on, and she cried over the phone. She felt like everything was her fault. I tried to do the best I could to reassure her that this was just what happened and that neither her nor her family were to blame. By this time, her father was looking better and had a release date from the hospital. This allowed my wife to finally come back to the States. During this time, I had continued to make attempts to contact and speak with the HOA board. It ended up being such a pain in the butt trying to get a hold of them that I just went to one of the meetings. I tried to explain my side, letting them know about the emergency in Puerto Rico as well as my job loss. This was an epic failure of all proportions because they not only ignored me, but they also informed me that they did not do any kind of forgiveness with the homes in their neighborhoods. Basically, they told me that I was screwed even though we did the things we thought we were supposed to do to inform them of the situation before we left. The lien on the house was also weighing heavily on me and my wife. She had been trying to conceive for over a year now, but her stress over her family in PR and the issues with the house and the HOA had officially taken its toll on her body and mind. Her fertility doctor finally told her that if she does not get away from this constant stress, that she may struggle even more with getting pregnant. This just continued to add more insult to injury, and now she and I started fighting nearly every day. It was bad. We had always had a great relationship, rarely ever getting upset or arguing with each other. Finally though, the time came for us to fight the lien on the home, and we were very quickly dismissed. The lien was not going away, and now I have realized that this is just a helpless situation that we are completely stuck in. Except we weren't. We could get out, but only after filing bankruptcy and moving out of our dream home. This was tragic news and my wife was devastated. Not only did this entire ordeal destroy our credit, but it also set us back financially for several years. I felt like this situation had ruined my life and my marriage. I lost my job and my credit tanked. I had bankruptcy on my record now and my wife would not speak to me. However, there was a light at the end of this horrible HOA tunnel. In the midst of all of this hell, we moved into a small and quaint rental home and I managed to find another great and supportive job. One that was even better than my old job, and my wife's family continued to get better in Puerto Rico and they even received some insurance money to help them rebuild their home. This news really took the stress off of my wife. A few months after leaving our dream home that was governed by our tyrannical HOA, life slowly started to pick up and get back to normal. My wife even found out that she was pregnant with our twin sons. Leaving the HOA home was a gigantic stress and something that I would never want to deal with again, but in the end I feel like things worked out for the better. It felt like life and everything around me was falling apart, but it was like it happened for a reason. I have had my awesome job for years and we have slowly built our credit back from the ground up. Something I am crazy proud of because filing for bankruptcy ruins your credit damn near forever. My wife and I are closer than ever as well, and I think that overcoming the stress associated with the HOA battle just strengthened our relationship. Now we are waiting for our next house to be built, not in an HOA. My wife is pregnant with our first daughter and we need some extra room for our growing family. And yeah guys, unfortunately there is no epic revenge happening or something in this story. It is, I guess, just considered a really big warning for anyone that is thinking about buying a home in an HOA neighborhood. Obviously, not all HOA neighborhoods are as awful as this one, but I guess there is a pretty decent chance that you might come across some serious issues when you get involved with HOAs. Either way, if you enjoy the stories about crazy HOAs or awful neighbors, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one was posted by user MangaGuitar96 and it is titled "Tow my son's car, say goodbye to yours and your friend's car." This one took place around the 60s and follows my late grandmother. For those wondering, my late grandmother is the same one who messed with her neighbor's sanity with that pink elephant and sunk the other neighbor's boat. This one was another story involving the drunk of a neighbor whose sanity my grandmother made question. My dad was in his 20s when this started and it began with one of my uncles. This uncle in particular is my father's foster brother. My grandparents took him in when he was young and raised him as their own. They never argued with him if he wanted something or wanted to save up for something, so when my uncle was 17, he saved up for a car of his own. Now, the street my dad grew up on was pretty small, a dead-end street to be exact. He grew up in a fishing village in New York that was located on an inland peninsula, but also a yacht club was on that street. So, parking on that street was a little tight, to be truthful. When my uncle got his car, he brought it out onto the street to repair it since the driveway was too small to work in. Unfortunately, it did not have a license plate since you needed to be 18 at the time to get one, and my uncle was preparing it for when he turned 18. One day, the drunk neighbor invited a bunch of his friends over from the yacht club to go out on the water with him. When they arrived, they had little room to park their cars, so the neighbors decided to do something pretty dumb. He had my uncle's car stickered and towed the same day, so his friends had room to park. My grandmother was pretty furious and decided to get her revenge right then and there. Now, for those who read my previous stories, you know that my grandma was a bit of a pro when it came to revenge. Since she grew up with 6 sisters and 1 brother, you pick up on a lot of things. The revenge. Now, while the neighbor and his buddies went out on their boats for the day, Grandma made the decision to head over to the Brooklyn Naval Yard. They had their own impound lot, so my grandmother spoke with them and had a bunch of tow trucks come to the street and one by one take the neighbor's car and all of his friends' cars with them. When they all came back, they were all in shock to find their cars gone. They managed to wake the neighbor up from his drunken stupor, who looked around to find my grandma standing outside and looking around nonchalantly. He went right over to her and asked, "This is about the car, isn't it?" To which she innocently denied. After that, the neighbor and his buddies had to head to the other side of Brooklyn, where the naval lot was, pay the tow trucks a lot of money, and pay the impound lot to not only get their cars back, but also head to the impound lot closer to where my dad grew up to get my uncle's car back. And one thing about impound lots, you are lucky to get your car back in one piece. After that, whenever the neighbor's friends came over, they parked in the neighboring street. The next one is titled IRS Revenge. This story is not mine, but a teacher of mine who I shall call Mr. T. This takes place when I was in high school back in the late 1970s. Yes, I am old. I was taking a class in finance. I learned how to open a bank checking and savings account. Read the statements, balance a checkbook, learned to play the stock market with a dummy account. Learned the difference between DRIP and a dividend stock, just a little of a wide variety of things dealing with finances. Obviously, one topic was doing a personal income tax filing. Back then, it was not as easy to get a sheet of paper projected on the wall. My school only had one of those projectors. Mr. T hated to use that projector, so years earlier he had found out that the IRS offered finance teachers a giant wall-sized version of a few of their common tax forms for use in the classroom. Maybe 6 feet by 8 feet long or close to it, it was just huge. We spent a week or so learning how the tax forms were laid out and what information they were asking for and where to get that information, etc. They were a great teaching tool. Fast forward several months and Mr. T announces to the class that he received notice that his taxes were going to be audited. He brought his letter in to show us it was real. He said he has been audited every year that he taught finance. He said he loved being audited. After a bit of talk among the class, he told us why he was being audited. Those 6 foot by 8 foot wall charts he used in class, well, those are the forms he used to file his personal taxes. Nowhere on those forms did it say that they were a teaching aid and not to be used for actually filing your taxes. Every year he would fill them out and mail them to the IRS in several packing boxes. This cost him a bit more, obviously, but he just loved it. Each audit was always done in a small office that could barely fit a desk and a few chairs in. So the agent would pull out these huge forms that spilled everywhere. The agent would inevitably have to reference another form, and Mr. T said by the end of the audit, the agent was nearly in tears. Mr. T said that he always got a refund, so he would purposely make an addition error at the very end in calculating his refund. He would short himself $2 or $3 just so the auditors would find an error and then have to amend his account to cover the additional amount. I miss you, Mr. T. You were one of my favorite teachers. And the next one was posted by user Infinite Emotions on our own subreddit r/ripe stories, and it is titled How My Petty Revenge Got Thwarted. I don't know if anyone remembers me, but I'm the one who used to work third shift at a convenience store. This particular story involves a customer who hated the sound of my voice. He seriously hated it, and by the way, according to company policy, I was required, not doing this was a firing offense, to greet each customer, plus sell each customer and say a certain phrase to each customer. This particular customer hated the sound of my voice so much that she would scream over me when talking and complained enough about it that my manager gave me permission, in duplicate and in writing because I'm a suspicious witch, to not speak to her when she came in. This particular night, she came in with phone coupons for cigarettes, and they were good coupons. $1.50 off per pack on condition that she bought 2, plus the company was running a special at the same time that took an additional $1.50 off the total price when 2 were purchased. So in total she would have saved $4.50. She comes up to the counter with a crap ton of junk food and while on the phone tells me what cigarettes she wants. Here is the thing about the cigarettes she wanted them from a brand that has several similar types of the same cigarette. For example, menthol, menthol light, menthol ultralight, and the only difference between them is what color the band to pull to remove the plastic packaging is. Regular had a white band, lights had a golden band, and ultralights had a silver band. No idea if it is still the same, I don't smoke and I don't work with cigarettes anymore. So whenever a customer asks me for cigarettes of that brand or a brand that does something similar, I always double check to make sure I got the right ones. Because tobacco products cannot be returned. So I hold up the packs while she is still on the phone and open my mouth to ask if they are the right ones. She clicks her tongue at me and I suppose that sounds like or something, and makes a locking motion on her lips to signify that I'm not supposed to talk. I try 3 more times, give up, ring up the cigarettes and the rest of the items. She pulls the phone away from her face long enough to pull up the coupon and have me scan it. I would also like to note that there is a line starting to form behind her. She pulls out her wallet to pay, looks down and starts freaking out. The cigarettes I grabbed were the wrong ones. She starts yelling and screaming that she never has this problem with other clerks, demanding to know what's wrong with me and why I cannot do this one simple thing. She calls me several slurs for less than normally capable people and then screams that while I am changing her cigarettes to the correct ones, I better not lose her coupons. So I figure out how to change the cigarettes to the correct ones without losing the coupons. I tap the customer screen to show her the total because I'm still not allowed to speak, which is exactly the same because I managed to do this without losing a single one of her coupons. She hands over the money and I count it out. She is 13 cents short. Are you really going to refuse my sale because of 13 cents? Me seeing a method of revenge for all the crap she's ever put me through, yes. We stare at each other for a moment. The customer behind her reaches around her and drops a quarter on the counter, thus thwarting my petty revenge. The look on her face when I gave him the change was pretty sweet though. And yeah guys, to end the video on a more interesting note, I would just like to show you how we changed our garden. And we actually just did it yesterday, so it still looks a little bit improvised, like we still have to cut the grass there, and that also still looks a little bit weird, like we tied basically the plant to this one. But yeah, I think so far Disney is really enjoying the garden. But she does like to hide in this corner. Right, Disney? You like to hide here, right? Oh. But yeah, I mean, we did not really build the garden exclusively for her, but it's definitely a nice place for her because that's her room, so she can go out whenever she wants. And yeah, before, if you saw the previous videos, you would know that all of this was stone before, and I guess maybe it does not really matter for cats or something, but I think it's nicer to like walk on this kind of grass. So yeah, I think Disney is liking it. Right, Disney. I'm curious what she's searching there. Nothing really so interesting there, Disney. Still curious why cat tongues feel like sandpaper. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Oh wait, I think you want to see a little bit more Disney. Oh, but she doesn't want to be on video anymore. So this is her room here. Yeah, this is her scratch pad. I think some of you have asked for that. And scratch pad. This is what you call a cat loaf, I guess. Okay guys, thank you for watching and I see you again tomorrow. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.